Reason that Jaime and I connected was that we were in a clubhouse room and the subject of out of body experience came up, and he shared his experience of the higher self in that room. And it was so similar to what I experienced that I was, I was blown away. So, Jaime and I, we've been friends ever since. So yeah, Jaime, what would you say, like that? Um, if you'd want to share the story, you can, but also like how that experience changed you in a way.
Yeah, my higher self experience was that I didn't know much about it when I went to the Monroe Institute. I had my experiences before since I was 12 years old. I was having out of body experiences, but I didn't know about the higher self. So when I heard it for first time from William Buhlman about higher self now, then he taught us to prepare ourselves to experience that. So while I was there, I did my practice, but nothing happened while I was there. But when I came back home during that time, that's when things start unfolding for me. That's when I start practicing higher self now. Now I'm connecting with my higher self, like Ryan was saying. And and one night when I was not expecting it, that's when I start having the vibrations, like Tony was talking. That's when I was having the sleep paralysis. And I used to get scared and afraid, but once I learned what it was and how to control it, how to relax and allow it to just unfold, that's when I have my out of body experience. And I went shooting like a speed of light, and I found myself in the void. So because I already knew what was happening, I stayed calm and relaxed. And that's when the golden light, I see this thing of golden light, and I found myself just floating in the void. Not in angelical voices. I was hearing these like angelical voices surrounding me while I was going up, up, up into this golden light. And all I found, I remember just kind of like seeing myself just floating and embracing this golden light. And then once I realized that what was I experiencing, then I just allow myself to come back into my body. And when I woke up, I was like just vibrating. I felt radiant. I
Mm.
felt calm. I feel like connected with with myself and everything in the higher self. So, but I also learned that you have many higher self experiences, different kinds, not just one, but different kinds. That's what I learned. So I'm wanting to experience even more stuff, more great stuff. That's so much out there. So that was and it was kind of similar to Ryan's, I believe. So that's how we connected. Yes, and these things connect us all. This energy connect us all, and to experiencing this, and what it does is that bring us all together as one. So that was my experience. Thank you, Ryan, for allowing me to share that.
Yeah, Jaime, of course. Thank you. So the point that Jaime made, and we'll end the call pretty soon. Um, this idea of an action plan is really useful. It's probably something I haven't emphasized enough. So here's an example of an action plan from Michael Raduga's work. He wrote a book called The Phase, and his approach to out of body is kind of the reverse of how Robert Monroe does it. So Robert Monroe does wake back to bed. So he sleeps for a couple sleep cycles, two or three sleep cycles. So let's say you fall asleep at 10, he wakes up around 2 or 2:30, stays awake for a little bit, goes back to sleep and has an out of body experience. So that's the standard technique that most of us use, and it's the one I've had the most success with. But what Michael Raduga teaches is to actually wake up anywhere between the 4 and the 6 hour window, or even past the 6 hour window. But the point is that once you wake up, you don't move, and you wake up already in astral consciousness. You wake up already in non-physical consciousness. So by not moving, you either do a dream recycling technique, or you just don't move and you sense that you're astral, and then you just get up out of the bed. And then you do another step, which is to move to a specific object in your house, like a mirror. And then you look in the mirror and, from there, you've already done the action plan. You've separated from the physical body. Your perceptions you do specific things to make your perceptions clear, like rubbing your hands, focusing on the astral senses. That brings clarity to the experience. So what William Boldman teaches is to do something like that as well, like to just get away or get some distance from the physical body so you don't get sucked back in. And then boom, higher self now or next level now. So the challenge that a lot of us experience initially is this falling asleep, vibrational state, and then these couple steps in the action plan, and then boom, we're able to have a higher self experience. So if, for example, you separate from the physical body, but then, as you're getting away, you get pulled back and then you wake up, that's an example of like you almost made it, you almost fulfilled your action plan, but you have to try it a couple more times. Situation here too is that the higher self is actually training you. Like all of this is part of your training, so initially don't get discouraged. Like for me to have my first OBE, I had to go through like 2 months of trying this every morning. But then finally, there was a separation that occurred, and that's what happened. So what we've been doing with Focus 12 has been more open-ended. It's more like you're just tapping into guidance. You're starting to feel the connection to your higher self. If you don't necessarily feel drawn to OBE or to lucid dreaming, you don't have to go the route that Jaime and I have gone. But Focus 12 in general is just, it's like a pipeline. It's a doorway to guidance. And I'll share his story next week, but one of the guys in our group had a Focus 12 experience that started as a imaginary or like a visionary thing where he was still feeling his body and still feeling himself in the chair. But at some point, the experience shifted and it turned into an OBE. And he had no sense of his body at all. Like he wasn't connected to the physical body. He was like fully in, an experience. So there's many different ways here, like Jaime and I have very standard training. So we've gone through like the steps as many of these instructors taught us. But the person in our group, he just turned on Focus 12 and let his imagination go, and he wanted to contact his higher self, and he was brought through these visions, and then boom, has some like universal love opening, all this stuff happened to him. So yeah, it just depends how each one of you feel that you'd like to do it. If some of you don't want to leap into the astral plane, you can just continue with Focus 12 and receive messages and begin to feel more of the higher self. And of course, if any of you want more specific stuff, you can always ask me, or you can reach out to Jaime. He's had many out of body experiences. So
Ryan, may I give an advice on a technique that I learned from Myra Duga, which
sure.
is like we were talking about, which is the rolling technique. The rolling technique, what he had us do is practice in the waking life, let's say rolling from the bed, like side to side. You practice that in real life. And then as you practice that, when you go to practice at night, when you go to do your practice at night, then you do it again, and then you go back to sleep. And what happened to me was that when I sensed that I was having phantom wiggling, like I was feeling my astral body, then I did the rolling. And when I did that, I felt like I was doing it for reals, but it wasn't for reals. It was my astral body doing it.
All right.
And then when I realized that I was doing it, I jumped out of the bed and went out distance from the bed, like Ryan said. You move away from your body quickly, because otherwise you get sucked in. And that has happened to me, that I don't move away from the bed and suddenly I found myself back into the body.
Yep.
So once you sense that you are getting out of your body, quickly move away from your body, like go to a window or go to a door and then open a door. And then that's when you encounter whatever was your intention. When you open the door, that's what's going to happen.
Yep.
So it gets very, very interesting once it happens. But if you already had the training and preparation, like Ryan said here, and our higher self is preparing us for this, then it doesn't get that scary because we've already been training ourselves for this. So that's one of the things that I learned, and it works pretty well. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan, for letting me share that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Jaime. So it's 8:37. If any of you want to go, you're more than welcome to leave now. But if you want to stay and ask another question, you're welcome to. I don't want to keep any of you past the time that you've committed to. So if you want to exit, exit, you're welcome to.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Jaime, everyone.
All
See you
right.
later.
Thanks, Tony.
Bye.
So I'm going to break down a little bit more of what Jaime said, which was he mentioned a phrase called phantom wiggling. And when he heard that, you might not have understood what he was saying. So there's a phenomena that occurs when you're getting close to mind awake, body asleep, or when you're actually already in mind awake, body asleep. You have the sense that your hand starts floating or that different parts of your limbs start floating. So this is the astral counterpart of your physical hand or of your physical leg that is already separating. So when you begin to feel this involuntary astral phenomena, Jaime said, then you do the rollout technique. So when your astral hand or your astral foot or leg is already floating, the separation is already beginning. So all you have to do to fulfill or complete the separation is to roll out. It's going to feel like you're physically rolling out of bed. But then once you do it, you actually roll out into an out of body experience. And now you've fully separated. So then you can proceed to your door or proceed to your next target. And once you're at that target, you can fulfill the intention, which is, in higher self yoga, it's higher self now. But if you had another intention, for example, you wanted to see a deceased relative or manifest something in your life, you can actually, say, behind this door is my manifestation, or behind this door is the person that you're intending to meet. And sometimes you open the door and it's just your living room, right? But other times you try it for a second or a third time, you open it and there the person is, or there your goal that you're attempting to, your manifestation that you're attempting to create can actually be there. So there's this gap between the initial attempt of like higher self now or to experience anything, and then the actual experience of that. Sometimes it happens on your first go, right? You say higher self now and you get transported into cosmic consciousness. It can happen. Your first try. But sometimes it takes a few tries. So the big question is, why does it take a few tries? So the gap between your initial attempt and the success, you learn a lot in this period. If it takes 5 times to have the higher self out of body experience, it meant that you had to develop all of those capacities. You had to keep trying and develop your astral consciousness and your capacity to have OBEs up until that fifth go. Let's say, for example, if it takes 5 tries, because I had OBEs where I would say that whatever I'm looking for is behind the door, and I'd open the door and there wouldn't be anything, right? Or I'm gonna say, I'm gonna open this door and it's gonna take me into, a deeper part of the out of body state. And you open it and it's like an empty pantry. The out of body experience is like a simulated reality. It's like a training simulation. So by exercising more attempts and by continuing in your intention to experience the higher self, there's development in your consciousness that happens that wouldn't otherwise happen if it worked the first time. So it's a thing to consider. Like, just because it's not working doesn't mean that nothing is happening. You just have to keep making the attempts and keep learning. It's a completely different, like, you're now transferring consciousness into a non-physical state. So just because something doesn't happen right away doesn't mean that it's not working. Just be a little persistent. Remember, Jaime is lucky he had OBE since he was like a kid, but for me, I had to like learn about this stuff. I had to practice for 2 months before I had my first actual vibrational state and out of body experience. So yeah, but I recommend all the authors that he mentioned: Michael Raduga, Robert Monroe, William Bullman. When you read these authors and their stories, it's like receiving a transmission. The higher self is guiding you to those particular books and those particular people. That knowledge and information will help you access it in your own way and, on your own terms, essentially, in your own self. But when you read their books, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I had an OBE after reading a book about OBE in the early morning during Wake Back to Bed. It really works. So
Yes,
any questions, anyone?
I just wanted to emphasize what you just said about reading the books and sparking an out of body experience. Because I did all my training too. I even though I was having experiences when I was a kid, but I also needed to train myself to understand more of the phenomena, because I was very scared. I was very afraid, because when I was in Colombia, my pastors in my church, they said that was evil, that was from the devil. So I stopped practicing that. But once I understood that doesn't come from the devil, that actually the Bible talks about the prophets having this spiritual out of the body, or having visions and things like that. And I thought, that's from the Bible, that's from God, that's from the universe, whatever you want to call it. And that's when I accepted again to open up myself to it again. But before I closed it, I said, I don't want to have this. I don't want to have these experiences.
Wow.
And that took me a long time to come back in terms with acceptance that this was actually something that belongs to us, that this is encoded in our DNA for us to explore, to understand, and to learn, and to gain wisdom and knowledge. That's my understanding, and that's why it brought me into reading more books. And then, like Ryan was saying, I sleep with my book, and that's when I was having more dreams. And from the dream, I was having an out-of-body experience without the paralysis or the vibrations and things like that. There's more that start happening once you start becoming more comfortable with this. So sometimes you might not even feel the paralysis or the vibrations. It just transition from your dream into an out-of-body experience. That's the easiest one. And sometimes you will have the vibrations and the paralysis. But once you understand that it's normal, that is your cue, that you're going to have an out-of-body experience, then you allow it to continue. So you can have these wonderful experiences. Yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
Can you?
Paul, did you have a question?
I think actually David started first. Go right ahead, David.
Thanks, Paul. Can you explain more of the higher self intention from an out of body experience? Because I'm just trying to understand it. I mean, is that actually what these guys are? Is there like a telos? Is that the sort of purpose or calling for all of this, rather than just doing? Like, I know that Jaime said in the chat, mentioned that it's for navigating sort of the Bardo realm. Didn't use Bardo, but sort of the transitional space. after death. It reminded me of like sort of dream yoga, Tibetan practices. I mean, is that ultimately what this is all aiming for? That when, from lucid dream to out of body experience to an actual experience of higher self, which then through the higher self brings about, I mean, I said in the chat enlightenment, but brings, I mean, that's the purpose of dream yoga, right? So I'm just trying to
Yeah,
understand if this is this what I'm supposed to be going for. I mean, I can get behind that. I just
yeah. So the command that is used when you're out of your body or when you're separated enough from the physical body is higher self now. So and the way that William Bullman teaches it is to say it like with very, very strong intention, higher self now, like you're demanding it, which is really funny because once I yelled it and the next thing that happened was they said, we can hear you. But I've yelled it for years, like with strong intention, higher self now. And what the higher self now command does is that it shifts you into a state of consciousness that is more subtle than this physical reality. So if we're looking at an onion, if we use the example of an onion, like the outermost layer of the onion is this physical, for example, would be this physical body. By using the higher self now command, it seems that our consciousness is accelerating upward or it's like going into a tunnel. But what's actually happening is you're going deeper into the onion that is what Tom Campbell calls the larger consciousness system, which is another word for reality, right? So the ultimate purpose of out of body exploration or Bob's work or many of these authors is to discover more about what this larger consciousness system actually is. And the higher self is, in my view, one of the primary aspects of this system, being that it's this level of intelligence that guides you in your incarnation, and it's a plane of intelligence that has access, is a conglomeration of all of these incarnations or dreams that we're experiencing on the earth plane. So this whole thing that I just said about the higher self is, the plane where it's like this access point for thousands of your incarnations that are on earth or in similar realities. That was something that was discovered by Bob Monroe or by, the Hawaiian shamans or by the sages in whatever place. Like that's not something that was found that's not something that was exactly explained in a book per se. Like it had to be discovered. So Bob Monroe has an entire, like all of the focus levels that are 34, that are above 35 into 49, those are all considered, we could call them the higher self territories, but Bob called them the I there. Yeah, the it of me. So this was referring to this plane, this level of consciousness that was like an overseer to all of these cyclical lives that occur on Earth. So yeah, dream yoga, the goal of dream yoga is the clear light. So the idea is that you're established enough in the nature of mind and in recognition of your own mind that when you die and you appear in the bardo is the transitionary state from one life to the next. That when you appear there, you're able to recognize the appearances as your own mind. And by being able to recognize that, you're able to awaken to the clear light mind or have an experience of enlightenment. And then actually from there, choose your next birth or your next destination as a bodhisattva. But it's very specific to, Tibetan Buddhism with the whole like bardos and the apparition of these deities. It probably wouldn't occur in a person that didn't have the transmissions or that cultural background. But you could see any description of purgatory or like afterlife, intermediate afterlife states as bardos. You know, it's just it's this period between one incarnation, one life, and the next. And there's you know, different descriptions of that from various cultures. So like the river of Styx and you know, being with the Reaper as he takes you down the river and all this. This is all like Bardo material. It's just described differently depending on the culture and the period of time that the person is in. Yeah. So the ultimate purpose is really discovery, in my view. It's discovery. Paul, do you still remember your question?
It was more of a comment. I thought that those bridal practices were for dying awake
Yeah,
and not in
exactly.
fear.
Yeah, dying awake so that you can realize the clear light.
Oh, okay,
Yeah. Like
so you can have, because it's easier to have that enlightenment experience.
yeah, exactly. Like how
Right.
like how could you realize enlightenment if you're not awake and
Mhm.
and aware? Yeah.
I would just, I'm not, with the focus 12, it's just weird with me because will blip out, but in a way that I completely lost track of time.
Mm,
Like normally if I fall asleep or something, I still feel that some time has passed. It feels like I was asleep for a period of time. This feels like I will be listening to Robert Monroe's voice, and the next second I'm like, huh, is he gonna talk again? Is it just silent the rest of this video? And I'm like, oh,
it's
the whole
over.
thing is completely ended.
Yeah.
And I noticed before that also there's something going on vibratory. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't feel like normal exit sensations. Doesn't feel, if I can't explain it yet because I think I keep losing consciousness, so I don't have, but I'm not in a, I'm not here enough to recall what's happening, but whatever is happening, I'm not familiar with those feelings, with those sensations.